Someone said, you'll never understand God until you have children of your own. And I think that that's really true. You know, it's interesting. I have children that are not quite making choices that I think are that we should. And then all we can do is we can love them, and we can show kindness, and we can try to be kind. With my kids, I would just love them to come and talk, and it's just so I could just say, hey, you know, this is the kind of things that I think you should do. But you know what? Until they're ready for that discussion, it's not going to happen. And I think Heavenly Father is the same way with me. I think He'd love me to come and say, Brian, let's sit down and talk. There's some things that I think you can do to improve. You know, it's kind of hard to be humble enough to say, Heavenly Father, I like it. Alma 37:37, it says, counsel with the Lord in all thy doings, and He will direct thee for good. From here on out, we'll just have to get past it across. And then eventually we'll pick it up. Counsel with the Lord in all thy doings, and He will direct thee for good. Yea, when thou liest down at night, lie down under the Lord, that He may watch over you in your sleep. And when thou risest in the morning, let thy heart be full of thanks unto God. If you do these things, you shall be lifted up the last day. It's just like I love to have my kids come and say, Dad, I have some challenges here. Can you help me? I think Heavenly Father would love to have us come to say, Heavenly Father, I need some help. Will you help? And so I'd love to help my children. I'm sure He loves to help us even more because He's an even better father, an even better person. Okay, let's start with something that's a little bit different. This is the first semester I've actually included this. Notice we call it 16B. There is no 16B. We just made it up this morning. But I really do think that we need to have an auto transportation strategy or something like that. And so we'll probably add it next semester. Part of the reason I think that is because my car has 197,600 miles, 500 miles. And we have a goal in our family. We keep for 200,000 miles or 10 years, whichever comes first. Of course, it's a 2006. So we're in the process of picking up another vehicle. But if we can make wise decisions now, if we can make the decisions, how often you'll get a new vehicle? You go new versus used, cash versus debt. How about negotiating strategies? How about strategies for warranties? How long you'll keep the vehicles? All of these decisions will have a significant impact. I'm writing a little spreadsheet that, okay, if I keep a car for 10 years instead of buying a new one every 3 years, how much will that save me? I hate to say the math is kind of crazy, and I'm still working on it. But I think if we will be wise in our vehicle purchases, we'll make a much better decision. So this is optional. You don't have to do that. I haven't written the auto template. I'll try to put it up next week, early next week. But think about this, because I think it will make a big decision. Okay, have you thought about what are the principles of effective auto ownership? What should the principles be?
Safety.
Safety? You want a car that's safe? We'll actually show you. Safercar.gov, a number of websites where you can check out that.
I think that viewing it as, just a means of getting from point A to point B and not a status symbol or something to aspire to, you can save a lot of money if you're willing to just treat it as, I just need to get from here to there.
You treat it as transportation. Does that mean you can't have a nice car?
No.
No, but you probably shouldn't have a nice car when you're just starting out. My first car was a 1973 Ford Pinto, unsafe at any speed. Down, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I was thinking, hold on. Ownership costs, yeah. So
ownership costs.
You can get a car for cheap, but if you're going to have to, incur maintenance costs every week to keep it up and running, then it's not cheap.
Right? So if you buy a used car, that's an important thing to understand how well they kept them in. I had this friend, I remember when I was a kid growing up, this gentleman told me, he says, this has been a really good truck, 35,000 miles, haven't had to do anything, haven't had to change the oil, haven't had to and I'm just going, oh no.
Haven't had to change the engine.
Yeah. But some people think that way. And you know what, if you're going to get 200,000 miles out of the car, which is, in our family, that's our strategy, then you have to do the maintenance, and you have to put it in. Other thoughts on principles of effective car ownership? You guys know if you don't come up with it, you're just stuck with the ones that I have. And there's no saying that the ones I have are correct. So let me just share some thoughts I had. Understand its purposes. A car can have multiple purposes. Tool to achieve your other goals, not necessarily a goal in itself. I know some people, once they get on their first job, they think, oh, I got to go buy this really expensive car to show that I'm successful. I had a friend who used to say, he says, you live like a professional for the first 10 years after college. You live like a student after. You live like a student the first 10 years after college. You'll live like a professional. Some interesting thoughts. Develop a plan. What are your goals? What are your goals for auto ownership? In our family, we have some interesting ones. 10 years or 200,000 miles, whichever comes first. So it's a 2006, so 2016, I'm hitting both limits. We have another goal. Whenever we get a newer car, my wife gets the newer car, and then my new car is her old car. So generally about 130,000 miles is when I get my new car. But I mean, you've got to figure out what those are. And in our case, it's more important that my wife and the kids have a car that's dependable than it is for me, because I can handle it if I'm stuck on the freeway sometimes. And, I used to drive into San Francisco every day. So I can handle it. I would be a lot more concerned for them. But we need to come up with that plan, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that what my wife and I do is the right way. It's just one way. What you guys should do is you should spend a lot of time with lots of people coming up with different ideas. Understand and minimize costs. You need to get the maintenance, but you can try to be reasonable in it. Purchase, fuel, maintenance, repair, taxes, insurance, depreciation, and resale. And take good care of your vehicles. Again, what we want to do is we want to have the lowest effective cost over the lifetime of the vehicle. And then pay cash if possible. If you can start the habit of paying cash now, you'll pay significantly less. I know people who can't think of a car without a car payment. I can't think of a car with a car payment. So let's get the mindset. Let's get the mindset early. Is there a better time than others to buy a vehicle? I have a good friend. His name is Kermit McKinney. He's in my ward. Just smartest guy. I joke I have the initials behind my name, and he's got the smarts. Well, he and his friend decided they wanted to pick up some Chevy 1500 Silverado pickups. And they had driven by the Chevy garage, and there was two white vehicles that were out on the lot, and they'd been there about 4 months. And so we went into him, and he says, my friend and I'd like to pick up those things. When you can give it to me for $18,000 out the door, he says, we'll take it. And the guy goes, $18,000, you're crazy. He says, but I'll tell you what, MSRP is $25,000, so I'll give it to you for $23,500 plus taxes, tax, and license. What does out the door mean? After all fees, all taxes, registration, things like that. So Kermit said, no, when you do it for 18 out the door, we'll take them both. The guy kind of laughed as they walked out. And so another month went by, and Kermit came back in. The two trucks were still there. He says, he talked with the same guy. He says, like I said before, when you can give me those for $18,000 out the door, he says, we'll take both of them. I says, there's just no way. He says, but I'll tell you what, we'll give you $22,000 plus taxes, tax you can have right now. Kermit gave him his card and said, okay, when you can go for 18 out the door, he says, call me. And it was a Friday night. It was the end. I can't remember if it was the end of the month or the end of the year, or end of the quarter or the end of the year. I can't remember. Kermit told me at 5 o'clock he got a call here. He says, if you could be here in the next hour, you can have these both of them for 18 out the door. They both got their trucks. And a lot of people think cars are unique. Cars are commodities. And the key is we've got to understand the principles so we can do the best job that we can at being wise stewards over the amount that we spend. I read some really high stuff. This is not a Reader's Digest. You can tell the kind of stuff that I read. But don't get taken. The number one sales scams are these deals too good to be true. How about 0 down, 0 interest, 0 payments for 1 year? Sound like a good deal? What do they do with those interest costs? Do they just evaporate in the year? Do your payments for that year just evaporate? All of a sudden they get added on. So now you've got a car that's a year old that you pay significantly more because you haven't made any principal or interest payments on it. How about this one? You walk into the dealer and he says, well, what can you afford to pay? It's like kind of writing dunce right across my. You know, what can you afford to pay? He can take it. He can make a 3-year loan, a 4-year loan, a 5-year loan. He can go to a 7-year loan. So is it how much we're able to pay that's what's important? Or is it the cost of the vehicle? So you negotiate the vehicle first and then the cost. How about this? Come on in, we'll pay off your old car loan. Been hearing that on the stock of the below. Come in, how about I'm underwater? We'll pay off your old car loan. Does that magically disappear? You still owe $2,000 on your old car. What happens? Mackenzie, what happens to that $2,000 that you owe?
It just gets transferred over.
It gets transferred to the over, and now you've got a car loan on another vehicle with $2,000 more on it. So what should you do? Don't sell a car if you're underwater. How about this lying about your credit score? You go in and someone says, well, I'm sorry, you don't get the lower interest rate. What do? The good news is we'll do it next week. We'll pull your own credit score. Wait a second, if your company can't give me the lowest interest rate when I've got a credit score of 760, are you guys going out of business? So make sure you know that. How about this, an arbitration clause? A lot of times people are buying these cars, they're given a paper that says this is just an arbitration clause. It says if there's any problems, you'll go to binding arbitration. Do you have to sign those? No. Go to someplace else and say, I'm sorry, I won't sign it. This is something that happened to me. We bought a vehicle and they came in, we agreed on the price and they came in and they said, oh, by the way, we etched the glass. So for $250, we'll put you on this database, so in case your car gets stolen. So they already etched the glass. Do you have to pay for that? So I'm sorry. We didn't pay for it. How about this one? No haggling allowed. Our prices are so low that you don't need to haggle. Haggling, good idea or bad idea? Anyone here haggled with the price of a car? How much did you save?
1,000.
And how much time did you spend haggling?
About 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So $3,000 an hour. Is that a pretty good deal? Probably. Anyone else haggle?
800.
800. How long did you haggle?
Less than 5 minutes.
Less than 5 minutes. So 12 times 8. $9,600 an hour. I mean, he's almost a lawyer here. So here, it's interesting here. Consider this: respondents who negotiated typically saved around $1,700. So the key here is we need to understand that a car is a commodity, and we would analyze. We do the same rules when it comes to a car as we do with anything else. You know, if you just take the MSRP, which is the manufacturer's silly retail price, you know, you probably should be paying it. But if you realize it's a commodity, we can negotiate. Again, another email from one of my nephews. He says, second question I have is for more of the future. I've heard many opinions on the subject, and I'm curious as what yours is. When it comes to a vehicle, would you rather lease or buy? I'm curious as we prepare for our future. What are the benefits of leasing? Go ahead, Brandon.
Isn't it lower upfront costs?
Lower upfront costs.
You gotta look richer than you are.
Yeah, you look richer than you are. Of course, you look stupider than you are. I shouldn't say that. I apologize. Right, so you look richer than you are. And some people, their business actually covers the lease costs. I have a neighbor who drives a really nice Mercedes, but it's expensed every week, and so it's expensed through his business. Other benefits of lease. So you get a new car every week.
So if you're going through cars pretty quick, then you don't lose as much money when you buy and sell. So every 2 years, you can just do another lease.
Yeah. So yeah, you can get a new car. The costs are still significantly higher, but you get a new car. What are the differences on the type of leases? What's the difference between an open-end and a closed-end lease? Difference? If you're going to lease, which one would you prefer? Closed. What's a closed-end lease?
The lease term is set, there's no residual value that you're guaranteeing.
Right, no residual value. If you have an open-ended lease, let's say your residual value is $13,000 and they can only get $12,000 for the car. If it's an open-ended lease, where do they get that extra $2,000? From you. That's right. So if you're going to do it, at least do a closed-end lease. Let's talk a little bit about terminology. If we can get our computer to be helpful here. So, a couple of terms we need to know. MSRP, manufacturer silly retail price. Some people say. Number 2, capitalized cost. What's that? That's actually your negotiated cost. What did you negotiate for? Capitalized cost reduction would have been any rebates or things like that. So you get your capitalized cost, then you have any capitalized cost reductions, and that includes trade-in, dealer incentive, down payments, and that gives you your net capitalized cost. So that's how much you're going to have to finance or pay for. How about residual value? What's residual value? What is it? Yeah, what you can sell or the value at the end of the lease term. Let's say Stuart's, we're both looking at the same car. And Stuart, he negotiates it for $21,000 and I negotiate it for $22,000. Is my residual value is the exact same star different than Stuart's residual value? No, it's not. So what do you calculate residual value off? Usually it's a percentage, and then they do it on what? Yeah, so it's a percentage of your MSRP, your manufacturer suggested retail price. We're having some problems here with technology. Okay. Okay, so when you start with, when you do residual value, when you're doing a lease, there's really 3 parts to the lease payment. The first part is what we call usage or depreciation. How do you calculate how much when you're leasing a vehicle, what are you up to?
How are you?
Good to have you. How do you calculate your usage? How much you use over the lease price of a car? Thoughts? So we've got our net capitalized cost. Let's use an example. MSRP is 25. You're a pretty good negotiator. You got them down to 23. Then you put in a $3,000 down payment. What is your net capitalized cost here? $20,000. Okay, so let's say at the end of the period, the end of the 3-year period, your residual value is $10,000. So what is your usage over that period? So in our example, it's 23 minus 3,000. Our net cap cost is that. Our residual value, in our case, it's 10. So our usage is how much? $10,000, which is your net capitalized cost minus your residual. Okay? So now the second part, there's really 3 components. Number 1 is your usage or depreciation. 2 is your interest costs. And 3 is your taxes. So your second one is our interest costs. And the way they calculate interest costs, it's our net capitalized cost plus residual times your APR, excuse me, can't spell, APR divided by 24. This is called your money factor. Actually, I think it was a way of hiding the interest rate. So, does that seem kind of weird? Well, let me see if I can break it down a little bit easier. Again, our net capitalized cost is 20. At the end of this 3-year period, it's worth 10. what is the average amount that we have borrowed? It's what? The 15, how did you get that?
It's the 2 as together divided by 2.
So net capitalized cost plus residual divided by 2. How do we calculate our interest, a monthly interest rate? We take the amount we borrowed times what? APR divided by? APR divided by 12. So what we've got is we've got the average amount borrowed divided by the average interest rate. And you know, if we just kind of net capitalized cost plus residual times your money factor. And that gives you your monthly interest costs regardless of the number of months. So if this is a 36-month term, we take this amount times 36 and it gives me my interest costs over the whole year. So if you think about it as average amount borrowed divided by average interest costs. I hate to reboot this just because I'm logging onto a different computer. Oh. We'll play with Plan B. Let's hold on, Plan B. Okay, so much for okay, and then lease term is just the number of months. So once we've been able to do this, then it gives you a framework. So we can ask the questions. Again, here is our three parts of our lease cost. Again, our usage, our interest, and our depreciation. So if we gave you a problem, do you think you could calculate the lease costs? Okay, let's try this. Let's do a problem. Now, I used to have you guys know how to do these problems too. The advantage is you've got a learning tool to help you out, so I'm not going to spend quite as much time. But let's spend a couple of minutes. So what is my residual value? What's the residual value? So 13 what? 13,750. And Nathan, how'd you get that?
Just the MSRP times value.
So MSRP times your 55%. What is my net capitalized cost here?
20,000.
20,000. So which is your 22, which is your negotiated cost, minus your cap cost reduction of 2,000 gives you your net capitalized cost. So Maxine wants to decide solely on costs. So let's go through and let's figure this out. And I'll help you with the first part. So we said in order to make this comparing apples with apples, what we'll do is we'll pay down payment and fees outside of the loan, and then she'll finance the remainder. So that's what we wanted to do. Okay, let's go back here one more thing. Chart these fees here. Is this lease, buy, or both? Acquisition fee. Lease, buy, or both? That's just a lease. You don't have to pay for an acquisition fee with a purchase. How about registration? Both. License? Documentation? Termination? Yeah. Now, Of these fees, generally registration, license, and documentation, there may be a little bit of wiggle room, but generally those are not negotiated. How about acquisition and termination? Those are negotiable. So once you make the decision, you can't go back. You can't go back on them. So realize those fees. And we're just assuming the same rent charge and loan rate here. So we said we want to pay the taxes, or down payment and taxes and fees. We're going to pay those outside of the loan. So we've got a down payment. And do we pay taxes on that down payment? Yes. And then our fees. So notice that we paid $33.10 outside the loan. Okay, now how do we calculate our usage cost? Go ahead, Nate. What's your net capitalized cost?
20,000.
And what's your residual value? 1370. So what's your usage? 250. Okay. Now the second thing we would do is we want to calculate our interest costs. So our interest costs are what? So net capitalized cost plus residual times your money factor. Remember that? So, or you can think of average outstanding times average rate. So net capitalized cost is 20 plus 13,750 times APR divided by 24, or you can just think of it this way here. So 42.27. And notice that we have to do, this right here gives you 1 month's interest. You multiply it by 36 to find out what's the cost over the life of the vehicle. Okay, how do you calculate your taxes? That's the last one. So all we do is we add up our 6,200, our 42.27, multiply it by our tax rate. 1132. We can divide that by 36 months. And we can do, so our payments are $309 a month.
So here we know our residual value.
Uh-huh.
So do we just automatically assume this is an open-ended lease? How do you do the closed-ended lease?
No, this is a closed-end lease.
So how do you know like residual?
The residual value is the same whether it's an open or a closed-end lease.
Okay.
It's just who's responsible at the end.
Okay, I got you.
And where do you get these residual values? Where do you get your residual tables? Do you guys get to decide, is that negotiable? Actually, no, there's a bunch of residual guides the banks have that you have to use those. So what the leasing companies do, they take into account, you know, what's been the historical value, resale value in the past, and they're actually probably pretty close. How about if we did this for buying? Cost of buying. Is it just the same as we had before? Do you have the same fees? So we do the same down payment, same taxes on it, but the fees are different. Now there's an interesting thing here. Remaining amount's $2,000. Do we just finance the $2,000? What are we missing out of that? Yeah, there's no interest. What is it? Interest or taxes? There's no taxes there. So what we have to do is we have to get our taxes on that $20,000. So now we have a new total amount to finance, including taxes. We figure out our payments: $21,250, 8 3/4, 36 months. Notice the payments. The other one was like $309. What are the payments for this one? Nearly $700. Do you see why people like leasing versus buying? So the other one was like $14,000. This is $26,000. It's always cheaper to lease, right?
Always.
Always. So Brett, what are we doing wrong? What did we forget?
I'm not sure.
We forgot the residual. So the assumption here is we're comparing them. We assume that you can sell it at the residual value. And in this case here, $12,856. Is it cheaper to lease or is it cheaper to buy? Actually, it's cheaper to buy. But which of them has the higher cost? See, the difference is when you buy, you have to pay for the entire cost, and then you get that amount refunded. When you lease, you're only renting it over that time period. But if you can see why people like leases. The other thing we could do is would it be nice to have a learning tool that you could actually just put the data in and it would kind of we check and see if your answer's right. So again, this tool is available for use. So you can see the information there. Let me make it a little bit bigger. I'm usually the one who can't see. So we'll start with MSRP of 25. Got our capitalized cost reduction, your down payment of $2,000. Gives you your net capitalized cost. So we started here with our lease. Again, here's our cost. Here's our fees. Or excuse me, here's our taxes on the down payment. The fees, do you have to pay tax on those fees? Straight fees, what do you think, Mark?
Is you service? I can't read with.
Okay, sorry. I used to think you had to until I went and looked at a bunch of leasing documents. Actually, you don't pay taxes on those fees. Like document license, those are all government fees, except for acquisition and termination. So we don't. So again, our 3310, here's our 20 amount to finance. 6250, 4227, 654. Those look familiar to what we had before. And you can see our 30922. So and then the nice thing too is on the other one we kind of do the same framework that we talked about in class. Again, net capitalized cost, down payment, taxes, any fees. So notice you're paying about $800 less out the door. And that even though the amount each month is significantly higher, you're actually saving about $1,500. Sorry.
So are interest rates on leases and buying comparable?
They're generally comparable. So, which has more risk? It's the lender.
I mean, I'm sure they make sure that you're insured
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah, so probably similar amount of risk. Hopefully the quality of the people that are doing that. Okay, questions on the lease versus buy decision. I have a question for you. You lease a car. What are the things you can't do? You can't what? Yeah. So I bought my wife and I, we were making the decision, and we went with a company called Montgomery Asset Management. When we started, we had a 3-year contract. We said, okay, we had to leave a fairly good position, and so they says, okay, we'll give you a guaranteed salary for 3 years, and we'll give you a guaranteed bonus for 2. And after that 3rd year, if it works, we'll continue moving, and if not, we'll just shake hands and we'll walk away. And after about year 3, we saw that it was going to work. We were above our break-even point. And so we had sufficient saved, we were saving money, we were on paid our tithes and offerings, and so my wife says, why don't you get yourself another car? So I was driving a Daihatsu Rocket. I don't know. I'm not sure anyone here knows. It's for people who can't afford a basic Jeep. But she said, go out and do it. And so we looked into it and we bought it. But afterwards I went out and put in a roll bar on it. Could I do that with a lease deal? No. After that I told my wife, bought some Cobra R rims so we had more stopping power, more rubber on the road so you could slow down faster. Can you do that with a? You can't do it. And how many miles can you put on most leases?
12,000.
Well, 8 to 12,000 a year. What happens if you go over the mileage allotment?
Yeah, mileage.
It can be like 50 cents a mile. It can be huge. Now you could also take advantage of this. Gary Rhodes tells me he saw this place called Swap a Lease, where these guys have leased cars that they put too many miles on it. And so they've only got like 1,000 miles or left a year. But you can get some, and then so what happens, if you'll take the lease, they will pay you a certain amount of money to take the lease off their hands. You still have to, it still costs you, but you can get a car that you're not going to put too many miles on. You can see what it's like. So in some cases, again here, the key is just do your homework. You know the math. And let's be wise in what we do. Okay, other questions on leasing versus buying? Considering I'm putting the quiz together right now, it's probably a good idea. Let's see if this is... Nope. Okay, let's talk a little bit about car ownership. You know, when it comes to newer used cars, there's really three parts. Number one, choosing a vehicle. Number two, before you go looking. And then the last one is after you found it. So let's just kind of go through this quickly. Number one, you know, when you're choosing a vehicle, make sure you understand your goals. Make sure you understand your budget. Too many people make their budgets fit their car instead of their cars fit their budgets. And the sad part about this is it forces them that other goals get relegated to a lower priority. You know, you wonder why there's a lot of people right now who don't have money saved for retirement. To a large degree, it's because they spend so much on automobiles and spend so much on houses. And so we can be wise in the things that we can do so much better. Number two, are you putting aside money each month to purchase another vehicle in the future? You know, even if it's $100 or something like this, it can go a long way. Number two, you want a vehicle that's safe for your family. If you want to go onto a place like, sorry, we're going between. This is safercar.gov, so you can see things such as recalls, safety technology, complaints and defects, car seats. I like crash test ratings too, things like this. And so what you want a vehicle that is safe, and that's really important that we work there. And then automobile reports. Anyone use Consumer Reports? I find that's a good resource when it comes, especially when I'm trying to find, okay, here's a vehicle I'm looking at, here's a year, and it'll tell you, okay, the electrical system and the powertrain and the engine, and all of these things, what have been the number of reported defects or reported problems. And so if you can find a vehicle that has a fairly good history on Consumer Reports, I've been pretty lucky in that area there. And then insurance. I think I told you before, I have a daughter that came back to school, and then without talking to mom and dad, she went out and bought a car. Mom and dad wouldn't pay for it because they're going to school, and that's the last thing they need to worry about. So she went out and bought a car and finally told us. What she didn't think about was, once she bought the car, she happened to buy an Xterra. What kind of gas mileage do Xterras get? Very poor. And she happened to have a couple of tickets driving in triple-digit speed. And guess what that did to her insurance costs? Like $300 a month. So you add its cost. And then once you have this automobile, you've got principal and interest. She didn't get a very good deal. They kind of saw her coming. So you got principal and interest and insurance. Can you go to school? No, because you can't. You're spending so much money on these other things too. And so guess what? You can't go to school. But I want to make a point here on insurance too. If you ever have any tickets, go to traffic school. How many people have been here to traffic school when you've gotten tickets? I recommend it. Try to keep those insurance costs down. Automobiles, they have a number from 3 to 27. The higher the number, the higher the insurance costs. When you're thinking about buying a vehicle, talk to your insurance guy and say, hey, what's the ISO number on here? Or what's the cost? You may have to just go on and say, what's the average cost here? Again, sports cars, high-performance SUVs are much more expensive to insure, just because they're more expensive to repair. Also, it's expensive to drive. Check the mileage in cities and on highways. Too many times all we think is about the mileage. We don't think about the maintenance and repair and other things. And those costs that are equally important. The new versus old decision. How do you decide whether you buy a new car or an old car? Dave Ramsey says, if your net worth is over $1 million, you can buy a new car. I'm not sure that's the only opinion there, but that's one that's kind of interesting. Again, if you buy used vehicles, if you do it wisely, you might be able to find a good deal. In our family, we found that if we can get a vehicle 1 to 2 years old, we've missed that big chunk of depreciation. And then the nice thing, if it's 2 years old and less than about 24,000 miles, you can buy those. You can still buy those extended warranties. And so we always tell the dealer, well, okay, we'll give them $150 over the cost of this extended warranty. And if he won't do that, we'll go to another dealer who will. Again, cars are commodities. So, how do you figure out what the dealer paid for a new car? Yeah, oh, you can ask them.
Well, then don't trust what they say you.
Actually, I've gone into the Ford and the Chevy dealer. we were looking at, the decision was between a Suburban and an Expedition. And so we went online to this KBB, KBB.com, and we priced it with exactly the options that we wanted. We found the same vehicle, which was roughly a $45,000 vehicle, and we asked the dealer, can I get a copy of your invoice cost? And they actually made copies for us. And both of them were within $100 on a 40,000 plus vehicle. So can you trust these numbers? I think they're pretty close. Now, is what the dealer invoice is what the dealer actually paid for the vehicle? Yeah, actually what happens is that may be what they paid for it, but they get what's called a holdback. We'll talk about that in a minute. So even if the dealer sells it for invoice price or less, they're still making money. You know, we were out, the Ford dealership used to be out on Sand Creek Road. Is that the one out in Orem? We were looking at this Expedition. They had a really nice one there. So we walked in, and you know how the car salesmen are. They kind of come over and they're really close, and they put their arm around you, and they're really nice. So I like to do the same thing back. So that's a nice car. He said, well, you want it? And I says, well, he goes, how much would you give me for it? And so, I like to cough just before, because that's what they always do. I coughed. I said, I give him a low ball offer. And he turned to me and he handed me coffee. He goes, Bryan, he says, we wouldn't be making any money. And then my favorite thing that I like to do, I like to go up and I put my arm around him and I pull him close like this. And I said, John, I promise you I won't force you to take my money. The reality of it is, if they won't do it if it's not in their best interest. But realize, you understand what the dealer paid for the vehicle. We bought a car for our teenagers after the Jeep. We'll tell you a little bit later about our Jeep fiasco. But we bought a car for the teenagers, and so what we did is we went and figured out which car we wanted. It happened to be a Honda Civic. And then we sent emails to four or five different Honda dealerships and said, we'd like this car, this trim, and all we want is air conditioning. Basically, that's all we want, air conditioning and a radio. Because, I mean, it's a teenage car, what do you need? And so we told them we want out-the-door prices. And we sent out 5, I think we got 3 back. Do I really want to go up to Layton or to St. George to buy the vehicle? No, I don't. So what I did is I took the emails, I took the one which was the lowest price. I walked into the dealership there in Orem and I said, hey, if you can beat this by $100, I'll buy it with you. And he coughed. He says, let me go talk to my manager. He took the email in, he saw that it was a real email. He came back to me and said, there's 5 cars out there, take your pick. So my wife just went out there, which color do I like the best? The point here is we're being wise in our framework, so we understand what we paid for it, we understand the dealer, and we always want the dealer to make a little bit of a profit. But we want to minimize that so that we're getting a good deal. Because if I pay $1 less for a car, that means $1 more that I can spend on my other tools. How about used prices? It's important when if you're looking for a used car to understand basically what the framework is. And there's a number of them. I told you about my Mustang. Well, we brought it up here to Utah. How well do Mustangs work in the snow? They don't. That's right. So needless to say, when it would snow, I would park that thing. I remember I was left here at the Marriott Center or the Tanner Building, and it snowed, and it was just a carnival of errors. Thankfully, I didn't run into anyone. So we finally sold it to a friend of the family's. And so what I'm doing, here's your high retail, average retail, low retail. You can see this is 2005. But the point here is, these things can give you a base from which to start. So when you start your negotiation, do you start at the high retail or the low retail? You start at the low retail. Again, knowledge is power to help us out. And then you need to understand what the holdback. It's a rebate to the dealer to compensate the dealer for holding the inventory on his lot. So the good news is we know what those are. You can actually go to this link and you can actually see what the holdbacks are. European cars have at 0 or none. Yes?
Is that for new cars and used cars?
No, just new cars. Only new cars. So the good news is we know what they are. So even if you're buying it below invoice price, they're probably still making money. The bad news is this really isn't very negotiable. At least I haven't found it negotiable. How about warranties? Warranties are in case things go wrong. Most of them are 12 months or 36 months. Understand that those warranties are important. How about service contracts or extended warranties? Good ideas or bad idea? It depends. And you know what I found out is, as I do the negotiating with these car dealers, I tell them I'd like to do your extended warranty. I'll give you $150 over what you pay for it. It's funny with Hondas, their warranties are really reasonable. With my experience with other ones, like such as Mazda, they're quite expensive. So when I'm looking at all-in costs, I also look at the warranties. And are the warranty costs negotiable? Yes. And if I can't buy it from dealer number 1, they won't give me my warranty for $100 over. I can actually go to dealer number 2 and I can get the same warranty. And hopefully they'll work. I think their view is they'd rather make at least $150 than to have no revenue at all. Key things, you want to look at contract terms. Who's the contract seller? I personally like the dealer. On my Mustang, I had a 5 years, 70,000 warranty. Needless to say, I'd replaced 3 transmissions, 1 radiator. So I guess I'm not very good on my vehicles. But with 250 miles left on that 70,000 warranty, I took it in and said, anything that will be fixed by warranty, please fix. And I think that single event there, paid for the cost of that warranty. But a lot of it is your decision what to do. Again, if you'll pay full price for a warranty, it may not be worthwhile, an extended warranty. But if you can get it for $150 or $200 over the dealer's cost, it might be worthwhile. Okay, then you've got lemon laws. You know, what happens if you purchase a lemon? It's a lemon if you've made 4 attempts to fix the problem. Car was out of service for 30 days in the first 12 months or 12,000 miles. They have to take the car back and give you your money back. Of course, what does the dealer do with the car? He sells it as a used car. Does he have to say it's a lemon? No, he doesn't.
It doesn't vary by state though. Like Utah doesn't have any lemon laws.
I think Utah does. I could be wrong.
I just had this experience.
Oh, you did?
I know in Utah they don't have any.
Utah doesn't. Okay, that's good to know.
By state it varies.
Okay. And then after you found it, you get a vehicle history report. So I asked Nathan if he would give me his VIN number. Let's see if I can. So this is Carfax. Can you give that to me?
Yeah, it's 1FAF.
1FAF.
You can see it on here.
Oh, sorry. 1FAF.
P56.
P56.
U36.
U36.
A203.
A203.
101.
101. Okay, accident damage reported, 3 previous owners, 15 service records, rental and personal. Last odometer, this is one of my vehicles. I like it. So, above retail, you're the third owner here, you bought it in 2011? So we can see here mileage, original price, so it was in Oregon, Desert Southwest region, auto auction. Then it went to Utah to St. George. Then it went to Ogden. Registration in Oregon. Those were still 50, most of it looks like it's kind of stayed here. Damage report, rear impact with another vehicle. Airbags did not deploy. So is there quite a bit of information here? If you're buying a used car, do you want a car that's been all over the place? When we were looking for the Jeep for the first teenage car for us, we were looking at Jeeps. We'd find, they start in New York, and then they look at Canada, and then they come back to Florida, and then they go to Washington, then come back to Utah, then go down to Arizona, and finally end up in Utah. When you've got that many owners of the car, how well do you think it's taken care of? Not very well. And so what I like to do is I like to find one owner who's got decent records on the car. They record when the maintenance was done. They record when the oil was changed and things like that. But those things are important. Those things are really helpful. and then get a vehicle history, and then you have it checked by a good mechanic. And again, it may cost $100 to $200, but if it can give you peace of mind, then you're doing well. And then once you find it, check the service records. You know, my wife is religious on taking our cars to Jiffy Lube every 3,000 miles. I mean, we've got all of the records to prove it. And that's probably why we get 200,000 plus miles out of our vehicles, because they're well maintained. Now, she's a lot better at it than I am. And she says, "Oh, you need to take it in," and so whatever she tells me that, I know I need to do it. But if you'll take care of the vehicles, they will take care of you. If you wait every 35,000 miles to change the oil, there's no, you're taking things in your own hands. Okay, questions on the process? Let me just. Oh, yes.
I have a question. So when you buy a car, are you supposed to get the gap coverage? It's normally like $500 to $600 more.
What's gap coverage?
So it's basically, from what I understand, it's basically insurance that the dealership tries to sell you that if your car is wrecked, it's like if you're going to finance a car, it pays the difference between what you owe on the car and what your insurance would pay out. And I bought that one car and I didn't get it, but I mean, the one time they were like yelling at me because I didn't buy it, like, you have to get it, no one advised you about it. I had never heard of it before, so.
I've never heard of it before too. It sounds like they're trying to sell you something too. That's why sometimes car dealers get bad images. That's the joke that 97% of the people who do it give the other 3% a bad name. That's a joke I use for a lawyer. Let me just share a story. My daughter was just turning 16. We were looking for the car. So we kind of went through this process. We tried to be wise in what we do. So we went through, we did these consumer reports. What are the things as parents, what do we want? 4-wheel drive, ABS, airbags. Those are all the only things we wanted. We didn't care with air conditioner or things like that. But we wanted a used car because in our experience with teenagers, we knew we were having lots of kids coming and we'd be driving the car. So we went through consumer reports and we came up with it was either going to be a Blazer or a Jeep Cherokee. And then we found this one that there was a number of BYU students who were selling it. And all of a sudden, if it's BYU students, I'm extremely careful. I'm trying very hard not to take advantage of anyone. And so what we did is they decided they wanted to sell it. It was for a reasonable price. We looked it up and we gave kind of toward the high end of Blue Book on. And before we did it, I wanted to do these things here because I teach this, so I should practice what I teach. And so just before we did it, it was on a Saturday, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I take it down and get it checked out?" Well, the dealers weren't open, and so I took it to just a place down here in Bulldog. And they went through it, and they said, "Oh yeah, it started to be $100." And they said, "Okay, the compression is good. You've got a front sway bar bushing that's bad, and in the back you've got a rear axle bearing that's bad. It will cost you about $250." And I said, "Okay, the sway bar bushing was about $150 to install it too, and so $400." So I went back to them, and they said, "I just take $400 off of it, and we're fine." So I wrote the check. I thought, "Okay, I got a good deal." Well, Monday I took it into the dealership, and what happened? They said, "Oh yeah, you're right. It's the front sway bar bushings. That'll be about $150." And I said, "Well, how about the axle bearing?" They said, "Oh, it's not an axle bearing. It's a differential bearing. It's not $250. It's $750." I'm going, "Oh no." And so we'd already bought it, we'd already paid for it. And so we paid the $750. We weren't too happy. And then I have a cousin who called up, and they were from Delaware. They came in, and they were going back up to the visit family in Idaho, and they said, "Hey, do you have a car we could use?" And we said, "Sure." My daughter couldn't drive it just yet, just because she wasn't 16. And we said, "Sure, go ahead." So they drove it up. It was during a snowstorm. They drove it up in the snowstorm, and they brought it back. On their way back in Salt Lake, all of a sudden there was just this screeching sound and a real bad oil smell. So they drove in and says, "We don't know what happened. We just got this smell. It just happened in Salt Lake." So we'll see. And I think got an airplane and flew back to Delaware. And so I took it in, and so I had no clue. And then what they explained to me, what happened is the couple who had the car before us, they did not rotate the tires. And so pretty soon the front tires wore out. And so they just bought brand new tires for the front. But the tires in the back were significantly worn. And what happens when you run a vehicle in four-wheel drive when the tires are different sizes? So what happens is it puts pressure on your differentials, and so it burned out the front differential. So we just smashed that. So that's what the noise was. And I said, how much is that? They said $750. Okay, so they fixed it. And I was driving away, and I could hear this other noise. And I go, oh no, not another thing. And it was another noise. And so I turned around and went back. And I said, well, let us check it. And they said, oh, what happened is when you fried the front differential, you warped the drive line. And I go, how much is that? They said, $250. So what can you do? So I took that, so we fixed that, and that Friday, my daughter turned 60. Monday, we put her on the insurance. And Tuesday, she told me. And the good news is because we had gone through all of this things, we got back everything we had put into the car, plus a little bit more. But supposedly, I know what I'm talking about. And yet we didn't. It didn't always work out. So you just have to realize that there are risks on this. And so the more you can understand about the car and the owners and the maintenance and things like this, the better you have to do. There's a question too. Do you have to go into a dealership to buy a car? No. Again, my wife and I were making the decisions. We were looking either a Suburban or an Expedition. And this was in 2006. You know what sold the deal? 2 buttons on the back car where you push a button and the seat comes up, you push another button and they go down. Because my wife, with 7 kids, she wanted the vehicle. And we had just gone to the car show there in Southtown or someplace like that. And so we figured out we wanted an Expedition. We figured out what the options we wanted on it. And we found one, and that was it, in Layton. And so we just called them up. And I'd already talked at the car show. I'd already talked to someone from that dealership, and so I called them up and I said, we'd like to make an offer on your Expedition here. We know that you have. So we actually went online and we found out that was the only place that had it. And my wife wanted black. She wanted the navigation stuff. She wanted something for the kids, just because we have lots of kids. And so he turned to me and he says, Bryan, how much what are you willing to offer me for it? Notice that they always have you throw the first bid out. Why is that? Yeah. And so what do? We lowball, that's right. So I said, invoice minus $500. You pay the cost. He says, well, let me go talk with my manager. You notice they always have to talk with their managers. So he came back. He goes, invoice plus $500. So I said, hey, look. These things aren't selling very well. It's been on your lot for a while. Gas prices are up. So I was trying to give him some support. So I said, okay, invoice minus $200. He coughed. He said, let me go talk with that manager. He came back and he said, invoice plus $200. My wife was getting ready to go to Disneyland. So I hate to say during UEA, which is Utahns entering Anaheim. During that time period, she wanted to go down. She says, tell them this. Tell them if you can deliver it today, we will give you $200 over invoice. So we said, okay, you deliver it today, we'll $200 over invoice. I said, well, we'll meet you halfway. So we met at a Wendy's in Salt Lake. They drove down from Layton, wrote out a check right there. We paid for their dinner, him and his wife, and we got our car. Interesting thing is, about 6 weeks later, they called my wife and says, "Well, how did you like visiting our showroom?" She said, "I don't know. I've never visited your showroom." And the truth is, you can actually do that. It's important for us to understand cars are commodities, and we need to be wise. And so the challenge becomes, how do we develop an automobile plan? How do you develop a plan? A strategy for automobile. Give me some ideas of things that might be in your strategy.
Assess your needs.
Assess your needs. Make sure you buy something here. What are some of the things? How about the debt versus cash decision? Is that important? So if you pay credit for all your cars, buy your cars on credit, you'll be paying interest for the rest of your life. Other things that should go into the decision. How about how long you'll keep a vehicle? Again, in our family, which is just a single data point, our families, we keep them for 10 years or 200,000 miles. So our car has 197,000, I think like 600 miles on it right now. So we're really close to the end of its useful life. But if you do that, if you don't buy new car every year, are you paying for expensive depreciation? You might be paying a little bit more maintenance, but if you'll basically take good care of the cars, they'll last. Other thoughts? Yes, Kurt?
So you said 10 years or 200,000. I'm just curious why you decide that instead of just pushing it until it dies.
Well, because I had a car with 200,000 miles that I wanted to get rid of. So, no logical, it's just kind of an
I
arbitrary
was just
thing.
wondering, because that doesn't he pushes it until it dies.
So dies,
So he has a couple cars over 250,000.
Yeah. I have a brother who's got a car with like 275, and more power to him.
Okay.
But he knows a lot more about cars than I do. Other things you might include in this. I think, how about how often you buy a new car? So we talked about how long you keep it. And, and these are recommendations. These are the things you'll do, and things might change. Like I said, my Mustang, I sold it with like 100,000 miles or 86 or something like that, just because it just wasn't good in the snow. So things can change. But I think if we'll think about the decision of how long we keep it, we'll think about, you know you're going to keep a vehicle for 200,000 miles, will you take good care of it? Yeah. Will you make sure it gets the maintenance and the oil change? Yeah. And also, if you're buying a vehicle that you know you're going to keep for 200,000 miles, are you going to do your homework a little bit more? Yeah, you want people who have also done the same thing. I kind of like lease vehicles because a lot of the dealerships will do all the maintenance for you on them. So I know that the maintenance has been done. Other things you'll include. Maybe things like negotiating strategy. Go ahead, Zach.
I think there's a lot of value to buying a used car from someone that you know versus buying it from a dealer off the lot.
Yeah.
I was looking to buy a used car 2 years ago, and I actually was able to find one from my great grandma's best friend. So she was pretty old, and she was kind of looking to stop driving, and so she took really great care of the car, and she was the only owner. It was a car that was 10 years old, and she only put like 16,000 miles on it, crazy like that.
Has it been a good deal?
It's been a really, really good car for me. I've had it for almost 2 years now, and it's been really, really great. And I think that what I've learned from that is kind of the importance of finding a car where there's been fewer owners.
Carfax.com, finding fewer owners.
And she did keep really good records of the car as well. All the maintenance she performed on it. And I think also getting it from someone that you know, because they're going to probably be a little bit more honest with you about the current situation in the car and all those things. I learned in all the things you do.
So if you can, buy it from someone you know. Any other thoughts? So again, what we'd like you to do is think through your auto decision, your auto strategy. So in our family, again, and it's 10 years, 200,000 miles. Dave Ramsey, if you've got more than $1 million in net worth, you can buy a new car. I'm not sure I agree with that, but in ours, once we get a second car, a new car, my wife gets the new car, I get the old car. I usually get her cars with about 130,000. So at 130,000, they become my cars, and so I've also got incentive to make sure they're maintained well too, because I know I'll eventually get them. But lots of different things. And the key is you guys now need to make those decisions. What is going to be your auto strategy? So just like you have action plans for cash management, debt and debt reduction, I would think through your auto strategy as well. Because if you can make good decisions now where you're not paying a car payment for the rest of your life, when you're not paying the most expensive depreciation, when you're not getting a new vehicle every 2.5 years, when you're not paying for the car dealers, kids going to school, you'll do a lot better and you'll have a lot more resources for your own personal goals and your own retirement. Okay, let's just spend a couple of minutes. Let's spend a couple of minutes if you want to get. I'd like you to think about what are the takeaways from today's discussion. Grab your computers and bring up digital diary or bring up your journal or your spreadsheet. Let's just take a couple of minutes. What are your takeaways from today?
One of the biggest ones is do your research, whether it's a new car or a used car. It really saves you a lot of money and make sure you buy a car that fits your needs.
And research is something that's so important because the more research you have, the less you can minimize the risk on it. Liz, how about you?
I actually wrote down something very similar. You know, from these, there's tons of tools we can use. The difference, whether how much we save, it's really we do our homework before.
Do your homework. It's like the things you're learning in the graduate program. Do your homework. Eric, your takeaways for today?
Buying used is probably going to be a better option if you're willing to do the additional legwork and look at the car pack, getting it checked out by.
And I find that the upfront depreciation is just so great. John, how about you? What are your takeaways from today?
I realize we can use the research.
There's a lot of websites there. I've included some of those on the PowerPoints. They're hyperlinked in. But there's a lot of good websites too. Anyone else like to volunteer?
I like when you talked about how we need to make a car fit our budget and not the other way around. So I think it's easy to get emotionally attached to your cars.
It is. And boy, once you get out there and they say, if you'll put these rims on it, it'll really look nice. And you think, oh, what's it going to look like in those rims? But you can find you can add $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000 to the cost of the car just for things that will not make it drive any better. Did you have a comment?
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah. Let me just share a few thoughts that I add. Number one, even when you do it all right, there are still risks. So again, I'm supposed to know this stuff, I teach it, and I still have some interesting experiences. That's why we have the teenager's car and not the parent's car. Number two, you need to understand the real purpose of the vehicle. Try not to make it a question of life. Because I would rather have money saved in my retirement account than I would have for a new car or a nicer car. My BMW is my big Mormon wagon, and we'll still have a big Mormon wagon. And number three, just like we set goals in each of our areas, we need to set goals in our auto ownership areas. If you'll think about how often you're going to buy a car, how many miles you're going to keep it, if you think about whether you're going to pay cash versus debt, if you think about whether you're going to take on a car payment, if you'll think about negotiating strategies, if you think about, how long you'll keep it, all of those things should be inputs in our decision. And again, if we don't have a plan, we will not do very well. Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.